Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest on the potential for a proper polar plunge as we do head into the early parts of March. Now we have been talking about this for a number of weeks because we had the sudden stratospheric warming about a week or two ago now, and it is starting to propagate through the atmosphere, and we are going to see some big northern blocking into the start of March. Its exact positioning and where the cold air goes from the blocking, we can't say for certain as of yet, but today the three main models, the GFS, the GEM and the ECMWF, are all producing cold or very cold northerly winds into the first week of March that would be very snowy as well, under lower pressure. And as we see in the ensembles, it's not 100%, but there is increasing trends and increasing clusters of those ensemble members getting down to those very cold temperatures. So likelihood of this very cold spell into early March is increasing. It is not guaranteed yet, but we'll continue to have a look at what is going on in the models today. So we'll start on the live radar, we'll go through the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days. And it is going to be fairly cold the next 5 days as we start to see cool air starting to move in from the north and the east, but nothing especially cold. And then of course we'll have a look at the longer range charts at the potential for that real cold polar northerly wind into early March. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. So as you can see on the live radar at the moment, as I'm viewing this at 2 PM, you can see it is a very showery day as we are into a cooler polar maritime air mass. Now it isn't particularly cold out there. Most areas it's back down to really average for the time of year. A bit of snow over northern hills and Scotland. But the big change is this quite widespread shower activity. Again, most areas not seeing particularly heavy precipitation at all, maybe 1 or 2 millimetres, especially some areas in the south and the east. Some very little precipitation in the last month, hardly any rain through February, and we're seeing a little bit of rain here. Nothing that would really give any problems at all, but just a bit of precipitation for the ground. Now it's going to remain fairly showery, but eventually high pressure will ridge back in, so turn drier, but also colder as well, with a bit more inversion taking place in the daytime, and overnight temperatures will be dropping down towards freezing wherever we do see clearer skies. Now, if you were to put on the temperatures, it should be sort of peak temperatures of the day, and you can see it is generally cool compared to what we've had recently. Very little thick yellows, just sort of little areas of yellows popping up, again indicating those temperatures back down towards the high single digits, or even mid single digits, back down towards average for the time of year, and it will be trending below average over the next couple of days, and potentially well below average in a week to 10 days time. Now if you go over to the UKV and see how the precipitation and temperature does evolve over the next 5 days, now you can see at the moment we do have all that shower activity, a bit of snow earlier, and that shower activity continues through this evening before eventually turning drier around midnight time. Still a few showers pushing in, but generally under higher pressure. Most areas are dry, and when we've got that gap of between the clouds, that's where we will see potentially a frost developing. Into tomorrow afternoon, we see more cloud and more precipitation pushing to the north. This is another cold front introducing even colder air that is moving around the higher pressure, and eventually will only really impact areas in the east and the south. We'll put on those upper air temperatures in a minute, we'll be able to see that. Eventually it does go into a sort of a showery northeasterly, but nothing too significant, and it's just generally cold, high pressure pattern into the last few days of March. So you can see it's pretty pleasant, last few days of February that is. So you can see it's pretty pleasant, pretty sunny, a few odd showers here or there, but it will start to feel pretty chilly, if not quite cold, with that easterly wind coming in. There will be a significant wind chill if you're along the east coast or in the south where the coldest air is. Wouldn't be surprised if it did feel proper cold out there. Temperatures only in the sort of mid-single digits in the day and down towards freezing overnight, and the wind chill will make it feel probably more like freezing a lot of the time. And the reason for this is you can look at the upper air temperatures. You can see generally colder air is coming in at the moment, but nothing ridiculously cold, a couple of degrees below average. Eventually slightly milder air moves in for tomorrow, but into Friday we do see much colder air drifting and hanging on in the far south and the east with this easterly flow. So as I said, in the south and the east, where we've got this easterly wind, it will feel really quite chilly. Now, if you put on the max temperatures, you can see this afternoon temperatures widely in those mid to high single digits, back down more towards average, sort of 7 to 9 degrees. Overnight temperatures will be dropping down towards freezing in that gap where we've got clearer skies across Northern England, Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland and Scotland. And into tomorrow, again, a cooler day, 7 to 9 degrees back down towards average for the time of year. Into Friday, overnight temperatures in the south could drop towards freezing where we have clearer skies, but most areas above freezing. By Friday afternoon, slightly milder, maybe more 10s and 11s there, with a slightly milder wedge of air. But that will be pushed away by much colder air. Most areas will wake up on Saturday to a bit of a frost, or at least temperatures down towards the freezing mark. And for Saturday, temperatures really only 5 to 7 degrees, so average to below average in most areas, feeling even colder, especially in the south and the east. And again, this is from just a slack easterly wind, upper air temperatures down towards -5 to -8. As we'll see from the main models in a minute, this polar plunge could be dropping those upper air temperatures down to -10 to -15, so a lot colder. So we do have to take that into account. So yes, it's going to be cold this weekend, but nowhere near as cold as it potentially could get into the first week of March. Now, as we head into Sunday, widespread frost overnight, and into Sunday afternoon again, 6 to 8 degrees, and again another frost into Monday. Again, those areas where we do see frost will change quite a lot because it is all dependent on positions of cloud. So we'll have to see that nearer the time. So if we do now go over to the GFS and see what that is producing over the course of the next couple of weeks. You can see this cooler air mass moving in at the moment, and as we progress through, high pressure builds over the top of us and to our north, and we see a slack easterly flow. Not particularly strong easterly wind, but cold nonetheless, coming in from a cool continent, and eventually that high pressure sits to our north. We see just a general easterly wind, but it's where the high pressure goes into the first week of March. It moves up towards Greenland, and look at all that bitterly cold air plunging out of the Arctic straight towards northwest Europe and the UK. This would send us bitterly cold and very snowy as well, with low pressure with that. We could see areas of low pressure bumping into that, even just like this, in around the 9th, 10th of March, producing very cold, wintry conditions, and look at all that blocking toward northern Canada, North Atlantic and Greenland, with all this low pressure, bitterly cold air towards Scandinavia, Svalbard, and out generally towards northwest Europe. It would be bitterly cold and most likely very snowy. Again, we can't take anything beyond day 10 with too much certainty, but the lead up to day 10 is an evolution we are seeing from the majority of the models. A lot of the models today are getting to this point here where we have the high pressure building towards Greenland, and we see that northerly wind starting to push in. So after this, still yet to be determined, but definitely a lot of the models are getting us to a point where we're about to go into this polar plunge. Now, if you put in the upper air temperatures, you can see it is going to go bitterly cold. You can see this weekend, look at those upper air temperatures, -5, maybe down to -8, but it's nothing compared to what could come after that. Look at that, -10 to maybe even -15 for some areas of Scotland. Bitterly cold air, consuming low pressure running into that, and could produce widespread snow as well. Again, if we have a look at the potential equivalent temperatures, purples start pushing in, bitterly cold, and again, proper Arctic air mass for a good 5 to 7 days there. And again, if we actually put on the temperature deviation, you'll see this even more extreme. Darker blues and purples engulfing the UK, indicating we're a good 10 to maybe even 12 degrees below average. Extremely cold conditions there. And again, no forecast here from the GFS, but this is a sort of pattern that could come off. We'll just have to see how it does evolve over the coming days. As I said, most of the models, though, do get us to this day 10 point, where we do have very cold air coming out of the Arctic into northwest Europe. Just where it goes and how long it lasts and the exact positioning of it, that is still yet to be exactly determined. If you go to the GEM, see how that does compare. Again, the high pressure builds over the top of us, cool easterly winds over the coming days. And then look at day 10, that high pressure moves towards Greenland, and we start to put in that northerly wind. Again, it's not quite as sharp as the GFS, but it does still, if we put in the upper air temperatures, pull in very cold air. You can see that there, the -5 line pushes through, and even the -10 is coming in. But we are just on the periphery of slightly milder air under the higher pressure, so not exactly the same as the GFS, but roughly a very similar pattern and a pretty broadly similar outcome. Close to the higher pressure, probably less wintriness with this, but it still would be bitterly cold, and anything falling out of the sky would be falling as snow. So very similar to the GFS, not exactly the same, but pretty similar there. Again, upper air temperatures 6 to 8 degrees below average, and again, if you've got that probably minus 10 to minus 15 line in, potentially down towards that minus 8, minus 10, or minus 12. If you go over to the ECMWF now, see how that does compare. Again, high pressure builds to our north, an easterly wind does come in, and then look what happens up towards day 10. High pressure up towards Greenland and northeast Canada, and we start to plunge a northerly wind in. Again, not quite as sharp as the GM or even the GFS as well with that, but very cold air is starting to push southwards, and we're seeing that big high pressure up towards Greenland, and it is generally a very similar pattern. So yes, 3 slightly different outcomes, slightly different volumes of very cold air, slightly different positionings and exact wind directions, but all 3 main models are broadly going for the same sort of pattern. High pressure up towards Greenland and a very cold, potentially extremely cold, northerly wind, producing potentially a lot of snow, but at least cold and sort of frosty, freezing conditions at the surface. So we'll have to see exactly how it does play out, but at this stage, at day 10, all 3 models do agree on a sort of similar regime. Now, if we do finish by looking at the ensembles, these are the latest GFS out to the 10th of March. You can see over the next sort of week or so, it is fairly cold, average to at least below average for most of the time. Again, you can see that period next week where we're down to sort of minus 6, minus 7 degrees, pretty chilly, but nothing amazingly cold. As we head into the first couple of days of March, it does go slightly milder, but eventually we see a lot of those ensemble members plunging very cold again, and the average does go a few degrees below the 1981-2010 mean. However, there is still plenty of milder runs. As I said, it's not a given, but the operational runs, which are run at a higher resolution, are producing that. So I would sway more towards the operational runs at this stage. There are plenty of very cold runs, but equally plenty of average runs and plenty above average runs. So still very much uncertain, but I would sway slightly more towards the colder runs at this stage. But as I said, we can't say anything for certain. We'll just have to see how it does play out. And of course, the coming runs over the next few days will very much decide that. If you look at the dew points, it does regardless look pretty cold over the coming weeks. Dew points down towards freezing, not sort of 5-10 degrees we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks. So much colder continental Arctic air masses. Even if it's not bitterly cold at the surface, the dew points will be cold, meaning those temperatures will drop away at night, and precipitation will fall of a wintry nature whenever those temperatures get anywhere remotely close to freezing. And if we put on the 2 meter temperatures, you can see generally not getting much above sort of 7 or 8 degrees beyond the next sort of day or two, all the way to early March. So it is turning a lot more colder, a lot more seasonable. So even if we didn't see the bitterly cold air move in, it would still probably be relatively cool for the time of year and relatively chilly with a bit of a significant wind chill at least this coming week and potentially beyond. We actually do have a look at snow depth. Again, I don't want to look at this in too much detail because it is very much uncertain, but there are quite a few snow spikes appearing, again, just indicating the weather is conducive of snow. So again, we'll have to see exactly how it does play out. If you finish by just looking at the ECMWF ensembles for the midnight run, again, pretty similar to the GFS, cold over the next week, generally average to slightly above average the first couple of days of March, and then we see big uncertainty. Some very cold runs appearing, some very mild runs appearing as well. So not too much certainty here, but as I said, the main 3 operational runs all do produce something potentially very cold, so we'll just have to see what happens. At this stage, I would lean, as I said, towards those colder runs, but we cannot rule that out, and that's probably just a little bit of bias for me there, as I do think that we will see some colder runs. But if we have a look at the ensembles just with no sort of view, definitely there is still a lot of scenarios at play. Just the operational runs are going for cold weather, and of course, having seen all the sudden stratospheric warmings, having seen some of these weekly anomaly charts, especially from the ECMWF, I definitely do think something colder is going to come in early March. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you stay tuned as we'll continue to update you on the potential for this very cold weather into early March, and we'll just have to see how it does develop. So as I said, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.